Gentlemen, salute. How are we? Are we well after the Bournemouth debacle? So we've got quite a lot to talk about. Just let's start with you, Chris B. You look as if you're about to decapitate somebody.
Well, as D. Ream once said, things can only get better.
Yeah,
things can only get better. What can we say? Another shower of shit served up yesterday against a Bournemouth team who absolutely cut us to ribbons. Yeah, looks great. So we went.
The second one I've had this morning.
Yeah, we were not at that game in any shape or form. It was a bigger robbery than the Great Train robbery that Bournemouth didn't walk away with 3 points. And you think about the goal disallowed, you think about Kluivert hitting the post, you think about the two they could have been 2-0 up within 3 minutes of the game commencing, and they were absolutely all over us. And I'm sure there were people out there who try and make a fake positive out of, oh yeah, but we came back and showed real resilience and tenacity and strength and courage to get a 2-2 draw. That is a result that papers over the already massive cracks.
That doesn't so much paper over cracks, mate. It's a fucking massive canyon.
Yeah,
honestly, yeah. It is embarrassing. That yes, 2-2, got a draw, got a point, blah blah blah. But really, if there was a textbook case of they let us get away with one, that was it yesterday. Because Bournemouth should have been out of sight and us dead and buried. We weren't. Fair enough. But that was more to do with them not finishing their chances and not taking advantage, as opposed to us having some fortitude and coming back. Don't give me that crap. It was down to them rather than it was down to us.
I've noticed a distinct change in the fan base. It may be us, I don't know, but certainly on this channel we've been having comments left on because video only lasts for a short time. It's got a very narrow window, and then it sort of subsides the traffic. But this is very strange. I mean, we've had a lot of comments left on recent videos days after they went up, and people are just very angry. I mean, I've lost all patience with the guy. I called the whole thing out months ago, and I did a thing on the Substack saying it's over because I'm not a child and I don't have much hope in my heart when it comes to stupidity. But I mean, his entire demeanor now is just killing people. And the business that because he didn't lose, he felt confident enough to come down and talk to the press and open up with his hamstring joke again for the third time. I just found extraordinary. I think he's a case study. Somebody left a comment there the other day suggesting that he might be autistic. I think they're missing the whole point. I think they're just looking for excuses.
No, he's ignorant. He's ignorant. He's not autistic. He's just fucking ignorant.
Yeah, exactly.
The audacity that he calls out the somber atmosphere in the stadium. Well, if you'd had to watch the shit that you've served up for the last 18 months, you'd understand why there's a lack of atmosphere.
Well, let me just jump. Let me jump in. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is the extent of his detachment intellectually from what he is notionally paid to do for a living. That he doesn't understand his responsibility, his part in the process. And the business of the crowd being quiet, yes, the crowd was quiet, and there are geographical factors at play. We know all that. But the reality is you have inflicted junk football on us for months. I mean, arguably beyond the first 10 games, we haven't had anything that could be revered by anybody in their right mind. And so you did that. So you've made your own bed and you're lying in it and you're saying, I'm not comfortable. But there's something else that I wanted to throw into the mix as well. It only occurred to me when I did a piece for somebody else this morning. Wasn't it Bournemouth where he was told to off you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we then played Bournemouth, and he's pulled away from the Bournemouth fans by Spence and others because no good comes of it. But then a real coach would know that. I mean, you just don't see it happening. But was there an element in his stupid, ultra thick, stupid playground brain where he thought to himself, well, it was a bit quiet today. Oh, yeah, Bournemouth. They're the ones that mocked my weight. and used expletives. Me, the maestro, the master. And so he's come out with a dig at the crowd, which very few people have run with, because clickbait, generally journalism, which we live in at the moment, nobody wants anything negative. But these are the dregs of the symptoms, the characteristics of this guy. And I just think that summed him up a lot, that he chose to make, because there are other games where the atmosphere's been poor, and he could have had a little, a mumble about the crowd, but he didn't bother. But because it was Bournemouth, and he's too stupid to understand that away fans are a different breed to the home fans, so he's attacking tens of thousands of people, when in actual fact it was a few hundred that had the ache with him down when we played at the Coast.
I'm not sure which word best suits him, narcissist or fantasist, but we've got a bloke here. He's his own biggest fan. He thinks he's doing us a favour by being there. He thinks he is the equivalent of Sir Alex Ferguson, as he's won a few things in Brisbane Roar in Japan and in the Farmers League in Scotland. And he's talking about the legacy, how the club's in a far better place than when he arrived, how we'll be thanking him for what he's done. I'm like, are you fucking serious?
When's the book out, Tubby?
Statistically, the worst Tottenham manager in history.
Yeah, I mean that in itself, and again, I think the Ange sexuals have become a little bit muted in recent days because they're running out of garbage. We've certainly had no fresh posts at 3:00 in the morning from what you don't understand about Melbourne meteorites or whatever it is. Nobody gives a toss. And you need to know your lane. You need to understand where you are in the food chain. And this is the Premier League, and I don't like the whole building up of it, but it's a difficult league. It's a tough division for anybody to manage in. And as we say, the shipwrecks of others line the coast for us to get a grip on it. And you have managers who come here and they just simply don't work, and they go somewhere else and they have good careers. But this guy doesn't understand where he is. And he's the worst kind of... I mean, I always joked about footballers being narcissistic psychopaths. But he, to me, is a coward. He doesn't have it in him. Look, I've been around the block. I can look into a guy's eyes and see if there's trouble there. And there's no trouble there. If he wasn't doing this job, he would be working... He'd be the assistant manager at B&Q or something similar. There's nothing about him. There's no panache. There's no real anger. There's not much energy. I mean, like I did a piece during the week about Unai Emery, Dick Emery's son. And, you had him animated and leaping around when we played Villa, and he stood there. Old Chubby stood there like he's waiting for a bus.
Mm.
One of those managers you'd hire tomorrow, and the other one you'd get to mop out the toilets. And it's
like one of those kids. It's like one of those kids' books, is it? One of these is a real manager. Which one is it?
I read some articles yesterday that saying that Mikey Moore wants away because of the way he's been treated by after his first ever professional goal as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old in the up against Elfsborg. He's got rid of the goal off of his Instagram. He's de-announced himself with anything to do with the football club.
I'd be interested to see a link for that. Yeah, okay.
And, he's not even been in the squads, and you think, this is a kid we're being told we did everything possible to sign up on a long-term contract. Allegedly had the likes of Man City and Chelsea and Liverpool sniffing around. Yet we've got a bloke here who would prefer Brennan Johnson to take to the field every week. And you look at Brennan Johnson, and he's an absolute liability. If he's not scoring the occasional tap-in, what else does he offer? How many times do you ever see him track back to help his supporting fullback? Never. And then on the other side, we had 30 million.
That's a bit homophobic, Chris, if you don't mind me saying.
Okay. And then on the other side, we had 30 million pounds. Yeah. On the other side, we had 30 million pound of championship talent, and it showed it was championship talent. As I didn't get excited about Odebear once yesterday. It looked like what did he look like?
He lost possession a lot. That's the standout statistic for him as a player, just looking at the data.
And the problem is that old Ange, it's his well no way at all, and it's round pegs with square holes. And he talks about all these youth players and everything. But you look in the past how we lost Nodi Madueke, who's at Chelsea now. Well, we can see another one. If this guy doesn't get football, which we promised him, what's the point of hanging around?
The two things there, Chris. You're spot on, mate. You're absolutely spot on. But plus, also thinking about it, how much was the loan fee for Tell?
Well,
that's 20 odd million. Yeah,
10 million loan. Yeah,
get rid of that useless twat right now because he is useless. Stick Mikey Moore in there because that's what it needs to be.
Like
it is. Sorry, go on.
That young lad who scored in the same game against Elfsborg with the Nigerian sounding surname, was it a J?
Ayu, or I forget.
He came on in that game. He
looked lively. He looked lively,
and he wanted to beat players, and he scored a lovely goal from outside the area. Never been seen again. But guess what? We'll throw Timo Werner into the equation. We'll bring him on after we publicly threw him under the Tamworth after the Tamworth game, and every single one of us knows that he won't be at Tottenham come.
You're referring to Ajay.
Yeah,
well done. Good man. Good man. He was a lively, interesting looking player who it's one of those things that you don't have to know much about football, but if you're able to watch the clip of him and his moves and his general contributions in that cameo that we got from him, anybody in their right mind would say, well, he looks interesting. I'd like to see more of that. The last thing you would say is chuck him back in the box. We don't need to see him anymore. If he wants to go on loan to Ipswich or something and we'll see him at some point in the future, nobody in their right mind would say that. But with Ange, we got this nonsense with Jed Spence, which I'm going to keep dragging up because you have to pull stuff out the archives when it's still relevant. And he said, I didn't make it easy for him.
Well, we tried to sell him.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. Because, I mean, if I need to get a wall painted, do you know what I do? I move all the furniture out of the way. I try to make it as easy as possible for everybody that has any involvement with me, bizarrely, because it cuts down conflict and error. This guy is headlong, a big fan of conflict and error.
Well, and he's also got so little tactics about him. You look how far up the pitch the fullbacks were yesterday. Yeah. And Pedro Porro is a liability. He can cross the ball and he's better deployed further up the pitch because he's as effective as a chocolate tea cozy.
I'd guarantee you though that low animal cunning exists in spades in football, and I would guarantee you that players who are getting lots of game time that arguably we'd find debatable, as we're doing now, with the likes of Johnson, with the likes of whoever you want to talk about, Porro, I bet you behind the scenes they're blowing smoke up the Aussies' windpipe. And they're telling him what a brilliant tactician he is, and I love playing like this, and they're reinforcing the myth to the man that he's doing it right, and he's clearly not. Look at the win rate. I mean, there's no conversation to be had.
You mean in our last 10 home games, from the last 30 available points, we've taken 1 win and 3 draws, so we've taken 6 points and dropped 24 points at our home stadium, our pitch, our fortress. No.
So I always come around to this, and I know it's slightly self-defeating and boring to an extent, but I've been thinking about where we go from here, because unlike some folks, change management, the future, planning, preparation.
Don't be radical and saying silly things.
I know. I mean, I saw these. It was a Post-it note on a bus stop. He appears to have immunity from being sacked, which we don't need to, because of evidentially other people have been sacked for much less. So on the basis that I think mathematically it's implausible, if it isn't impossible, for him to be fired. Could it be the thing that they are simply keeping him on because that's the moment that the clock starts running for Levy? Because I don't care for Levy at all, but I think he had a dark time of it before he appointed Lardass here, Thick Dundee. I think he found that very difficult. I think people weren't taking his calls. As we know, Arne Slot flew out, and he was basically getting brushed off, and probably very politely, because most of these guys are civilized human beings. But I think that's the moment that the clock starts running for young Daniel, and he's going to have the weight of the world on his shoulders because all the press is going to come out with all the usual stuff, a top 10 of how much money he's paid out over the last 50 managers that he's sacked or whatever. Questions asked why Ryan Mason is still on the premises if he's not of sufficient quality to step up and act as a surrogate coach or whatever you want to call it, a temporary interim coach. So how do you think it's going to play out, guys? Because we're only heading in one direction. I mean, we can say, yeah, well, he could win the Europa Cup.
He's never going to win the Europa League.
No, I don't think he stands. I don't stand a chance in hell. But I'm just curious to know that I don't think that would even work for him anyway. I think everybody's sick to the back teeth with him, and it is the Europa. And I know that sounds a bit snobby because we've had paucity of silverware over the last 25, 30, 40 years or whatever it might be since the 80s. But I don't think that's enough to save him. And I also think relationships. I think that there's fires everywhere around him. I'd be amazed to see. Sorry, go on.
He seems to have this inner circle of trust, very much like Hitler. Did when he,
Now, careful! I might have to pull this tape, and I can't put it out. You're asking me to hold two conflicting ideas in my head at the same time, and I don't think I can do it because I'm not a grown up. Oh no, sorry. Say what you want, because we're not charging people £5 to answer their questions on here, so there's no monetary value to it. So just crack on, just enjoy yourself. What about Mussolini? I think he would have been a great PE teacher.
Yeah.
Stalin. Now there's a guy who could get you doing a few laps of the pitch.
I hear Goebbels is a good coach. But
4 more beers.
Okay, that's not the best analogy in the world, but you know what I mean. He has this circle of trust, and he refuses to go outside of it. You every now and again he has to do something, the likes of a Jai and what have you, or more when he feels compelled to, what have you.
Just because you found out what his name is, now you're using it again. This is showboating.
I know. It's called research, fella. It's called research. Do your research. But it has this circle of trust. These players, like Ben Davies, when the moment Ben Davies is ready to return, he'll go straight back in the team, no problem whatsoever. And then Archie will be sitting on the bench going, "What the fuck have I done wrong?"
But this was another opportunity yesterday, wasn't it? That we supposedly had our world-class World Cup winning, the greatest thing since corned beef from Argentina. Yeah, poor old Archie Gray finds getting splinters on the arse on the bench. When you look at what our midfield three were, you couldn't have come up with a less dynamic three of Basuma.
Well, in fairness, Sarr didn't have a bad game. Sarr was actually okay, but who was he up against? Would Sarr have been, a player that you would have started had you had better options and everybody else wasn't so poor? But the business with Archie Gray, I just find embarrassing, and to me it reflects this business that he's only planning to his next game because he knows he has no future here, and so he's looking at the AZ Alkmaar game as something that's hugely important to him because it is going to be, I would say, perhaps not, but he regards it as being career defining. And the idea that, Romero, do you know what? It really bugs me. Do you know why we have training pitches and why we have training coaches and all the rest of it? It's to make sure that you can bring players up that are match fit and not just physically fit. And Romero looked to me like a guy who literally walked out the physio room door. And the idea that the coach says, well, he's not played in months. That's what the training pitches are for.
That was the physio door in Brenner's Airways, and then he had to.
Which he thanked. He didn't thank anybody at Spurs.
He thanked the national team of Argentina for getting him back on the playing pitch.
Yeah,
I think great bit of PR there, Tottenham.
Yeah, well done. No wonder the LinkedIn replies are coming in thick and fast. You too could be a springboard into Buenos Aires. It's just absolutely embarrassing.
Well,
if Tony has his way, Dr. Joseph Mengele will be applying.
Now, there was a very fine painter.
I mean, given where half the Nazis ended up in South America, there's a link there.
This show doesn't happen by accident. People think we're a barrel of monkeys, and occasionally the complete works of Shakespeare gets thrown out. But there is a strategy, and where there is a will, there is a relative. It takes talent, mate.
It takes talent. It's raw talent, isn't it?
It is raw talent. Can't name any of the squad. And don't know when the games are on. But if you want to link National Socialism with sophisticated traiing methods, we're your boys, and we're unafraid to mention the names of dead people.
just for the sake of clarity, I will say that other fascist parties are also available.
Well, they are. I mean, goodness me, we're all far right these days, aren't we? We're all far right. But there was a really great response on one of the Have Your Say page on BBC, where someone said, "Oh, we've got a young team. It's really emerging, blah blah blah." And I can really see the light at the end of the tunnel. And the response was, "I wish Ange would go into that light."
I wonder if Levy sat there yesterday, looking at the coach from Bournemouth, paid $2 million a year, and thought for one moment, "I'm paying this fat charlatan $6 million, and he has spent a fraction of what he has."
He's spent half, hasn't he?
Yeah,
I think it's about half the money. I saw a comment somebody made this morning.
You look at some of the shit we've stockpiled, and you think you'd need to be a miracle worker to get a tune out of Brennan Johnson, wouldn't you? And
the difference between those two yesterday. Sorry, Chris, carry on.
You think, are we really going to spend 60 million on Tell? And then you looked at Bournemouth, and they had the
one you mentioned earlier.
No, the guy that used to play for Bristol City. The guy, Anton Semenyo.
Oh, Semenyo, yeah. Apparently we want to sign, don't we?
Yeah, and he was tearing us to pieces. He did what a winger did, gets on the ball. But if you watched him, he tracked back a tremendous amount. And you looked at that Bournemouth side, and no disrespect to them, some of them weren't household names, but they played as a team that everybody knew what they were doing. Off the ball, it was spectacular to watch.
But this is also the case. This is also the case at Nottingham Forest, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think when Levy reviews, which I think he's already begun the process. I would imagine instead of the non-disclosure agreements, it's pain of death time. He's not talking to anybody. Yeah. But I think he's beyond the obvious joke of what requirements is, what assets, what on a CV is he looking for from a manager, beyond being a member of the Magic Circle or a designer for IKEA, putting together complicated things using very cheap materials. But I think he's really going to be wondering about his entire business model, because the idea of paying 15 million for a guy that you then suffocate, that you then handicap, you strangle, so he can't do his job. And if we rationalize it and say to ourselves, look, if Levy can admit to himself that he's the problem, that doesn't necessarily mean he has to go. It just means that he needs to accommodate the peculiarity of the situation. So we're going to get a coach in. Well, I might as well just get somebody in for 2-3 million quid. It will only cost £1 million to get rid of them, because I'll have that written in. They're going to be a bum, so they're not even going to negotiate with me. And then when it does go wrong, I'm not going to rack up this endless debt. I mean, he's looking at over 100 million quid in compensation that he's paid out to these guys.
Ambitious.
But because he's a bookkeeper though, because he's a bookkeeper, he'll look at it and go, I'm spending 100 million over here, but then I'm getting Solanke for 65 million on terms of over 15 years.
Correct.
And all this sort of
absolutely.
And that's what he does. That's what he does. Is he balances the books by saying, right, I'm going to buy these players, appear to look like we're backing the club and we're backing the manager, we're doing everything that I'm doing it on such favourable terms I can amortise that over X amount of years. And then the other engines, I can actually use that to my advantage by this compensation, because it makes it look like a loss. So you can, in certain years, so he's just a bean counter. That's what he is. He's a bean counter.
This is the same. I mean, keeping the theme running. This is the same practice they used in the boys from Brazil. They had so many Hitler children
I thought we were
coming
gonna,
out.
I thought,
They
I
had
thought we were going to
dozens.
get away with that.
They had dozens of them. So in case anything went wrong, it didn't matter because it was the one in Dusseldorf got run over. There was one in Berlin. There was another one in Bonn. But no, you're absolutely right. He is balancing the books, and we know from the way that he's traded his way to where he is. And we always say he's an excellent leverage guy for money. But goodness me, the amount of money that he's set fire to. I mean, he gets all the kudos for the Deloitte Money League, but then hang on a minute, you cost us a bloody fortune by not getting the stadium open in time, and then when it did open in time, you went massively over budget because we just loosely throw around the phrase when we're talking to each other. It's, oh yeah, they spent £1 billion. No, that was the end of that was the bottom of the page figure. This is like the guy on, and I keep making references to this on those home makeover shows, where the guy says, "Well, how much did you spend to get the barn conversion, the loft conversion, and to ignore the bathroom that you really needed on the ground floor?" Well, I spent 150,000. Oh wow, that's amazing. So, in theory, your entire house has had £750,000 spent on it. But none of the other homes in the road are worth the same as that. Everybody else did it cheaper. And his £1 billion stadium, in truth, should have only been about 700,000.
Well, it became a vanity project, didn't it? With the family members walking around, so we don't like that, we'd like to do this, or entrusting his son Josh, which is an admirable thing to do. Josh spectacularly got the whole thing wrong.
Yeah, Josh cost them a fortune with the emergency lighting and escape thing post 9/11. That's a matter of record. I had that from, again, 2 independent sources. He was given precise instructions what to go out and buy, and like his father, he's brain damaged and came back and said, "You'll never guess what I've got." And he went and got a looky-likey from Wish or Temu. And they had to rip it all out. When you have a problem with a fire panel, for any of you morons out there hovering over your keyboard thinking, I'll put him straight. When you make a mistake with a fire panel, you don't have to rip out everything in the bloody building. It doesn't make any sense. If you don't understand what you're discussing, remove yourself from here, because you just humiliate yourselves every time you open your mouths. But these people have spent a fortune, and their wife was wandering around. Oh, I think this would be better. I don't like those lighting housings there. And this is all stuff that happened. They didn't spend £1 billion. They never had £1 billion sitting there. They had a budget and they went massively over it because, as you say there, Chris, it was a vanity project because they kept bungling. And that's why we were forced to spend extra time at Wembley Stadium. Absolute disgrace. If only they had the efficiency of the Germans during the 40s.
Oh, will you shut up about the bloody Germans?
They would have got the stadium open on time, and the price you can afford.
It's like don't mention the war in 40 Towers. I thought I'd mentioned it once and got away with it, you know.
No, we decided to turn the entire show into homage to.
But that decision making, that level of decision making you've just described there in terms of what Levy done with the stadium, he's done it with the managers as well, because we had a generational manager in Poch who was very close to doing something very, very special, but he wouldn't back him because he was more interested in the vanity project. So
don't forget as well, Tony, the deal with Poch, and it's excellent you mentioned him, because I think the fan base is not so much split, but there's a bit of a bit of a muddle, for want of a better word, whereby people say, "Oh, he's brilliant. Oh, he's flawed. But the reality was, Levy should have identified the potential that Poch had. Now, whether it was by chance or whatever, a good intent, he built a team that got to a Champions League final. You really cannot afford to be halfway through a meal that good and send it back to the kitchen. You need to appreciate what's in front of you. And even if you have a better meal further down the line, you wouldn't berate the meal that you once were actually enjoying. And that's what he did. He looks down his nose at football. That's the problem we're up against. It wasn't Poch's fault that relationship went sour. It's my understanding that Poch wasn't perfect. Well, who is? But the Daniel wasn't perfect, but Daniel comes from a position whereby he immediately thinks anything to do with football, these are people who are out to steal from him.
Well, it's
You know,
also
he doesn't trust anybody.
They're going on about Poch and about Postecoglou being, we stick with him, be good. And then they go on about we played crap football under Mourinho and Conte. Mourinho got us to a cup final.
Yeah.
Conte got us into the Champions League. I would take slightly mediocre but successful football over attractive football winning us absolutely feck all, because that doesn't win. Winning. Winning is about winning, and trophies is about actually winning trophies.
The game's about glory. People recognise trophies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Remember the runner-up.
Glory is trophies. Glory is trophies, not attractive football. Winning.
Not
winning
watches saying finalist on the back of them.
Yeah. Well, don't forget, I made the point before. This business, which I absolutely stand by, because one of the great things about this nation, and we're not going to refer to National Socialism again, but there's an awful lot of prejudice in the UK. But it's very mild, and it isn't as dangerous as people think it is. It's people basing their experiences on their lived existences. And so you get Mourinho has got a bit of swagger because of his CV, because he's seen it all, he's done it all, he's won it all. And Conte the same. And the first line of defense, if you like, with people, just psychologically, he's full of himself. Stuffy little Portuguese man, I don't like him. Whereas I'm just an honest fella, mate. I'm a chap you could sit down and have a pint with, except for you couldn't, because you'd end up probably thumping him or walking off and tipping his beer into his lap and telling him what you thought of him. But these people, some British people, don't come across as likable, which is like when, for example, you saw Mourinho land in Turkey before the recent incident. They were throwing their arms up in the air at the airport because they acknowledged who he was and who he is, and were very pleased to see him. And when they drove him around central Rome in his open top bus after he won the trophy for them there, silverware there, first silverware in decades they'd had. And they're far more appreciative of those coaches. But we heard all this business about, the football was terrible. Well, why is it that we are part of the problem, that an environment is created whereby coaches don't get backed? Poch should have been perpetuated, should have been given more time, should have been tolerated more than he was. Because the reason Poch went sour is because of the way he was treated by the club. There's a decent manager in Poch. I don't think he's the saviour. I get bored with all this, very happy nonsense. But he was only coming out with that because of the way he was treated by his employer, which is why he's had, I'd say, modest successes elsewhere. But you need to allow a coach to build a team in their image, and then you know what you're dealing with. And we've got the worst. The worst of all worlds with Ange, because this guy couldn't build. If you gave him the people that built Noah's Ark, he couldn't build a boat. He's a small time nobody. But because most people are very limited in their experience of the world, they just see this sort of bumbling put upon Australian, and that I don't know. It just touches pulls a heartstring for them.
And I'm still seeing
that's where I am.
I'm still seeing Ange-sexuals and buffoons out there that embrace flange ball and are still saying, we should keep Ange. Well, why are we giving up on the project? And you're like, have you got any understanding or appreciation for football?
They have no
their right mind knows this bloke's a liability, and if we persevere with him next season, we'll be in the Championship. He is crap.
They reframe the argument as well. This is something else we need to acknowledge. So, we don't even can't even discuss anything with these nitwits, absolute dandruff. You say you want to get rid of Ange based upon what? Well, guess what? Nobody cares, mate. We're talking about facts. We're not basing it on his bad breath or his BO. We want to get rid of him because he's inept as a manager. And we're not a DEI tour bus that's collecting up waifs and strays. Oh, right. So who do you want to replace him with? That's a totally different question. I'd replace him with a sheepdog or a poodle, because they're notoriously intelligent animals. I'd replace him with anything because he isn't good enough.
So you're replacing one nodding dog for another?
Yeah. And he'd probably, this clown would get his head stuck in his master's voice in the old gramophone thing, wouldn't he? He's an absolute half-wit. But the idea that you have to find a replacement it's never going to work under Levy anyway. But if you've got us, as I say, you go into a coffee shop. I don't want somebody who's been hired because they got a ring through their nose and half their hair's pink and half their hair's turquoise. I want somebody who can give me a coffee in a speedy time and they haven't spilt it all over their own hand in their shoes. I just want competence. Competence is a wonderfully underrated thing, and this guy is incompetent.
And it's got to the point. It's got to the point. We know that Leicester, we know that Ipswich, and we know that Southampton are likely to be the teams going down, and mathematical intervention would be required to keep either of them up. We know that we're not going to qualify for Europe unless we win the Europa League. We're not going to win it. So what better opportunity to kick this bloke into the long grass as we're making all these plans around him being at the wheel. And for instance, if we do get rid of him, what's going to say that the new manager coming in is going to want us to spend 60 million on a Mathis Tell, who actually might say, oh no, 50, 60 million, I'd rather take the lad Delap from Ipswich, a British player, muscle man, can bring others in. So we're giving him the money and we're giving him the tools, but these same tools might not be wanted by a different manager. And it just makes
at this stage, I would take somebody from the Championship. If you just wanted somebody who was really ambitious, take him from the Championship and just say, right, okay, we're going to and get rid of all the bloody monkeys in the background, Langs of this world and what have you. Just get rid of them all and put in a proper network like they used to have with Paul. It's funny, isn't it, how all the really good, not support staff, but the people in the background, the people that do all the real hard, the work, like Paul Mitchell's of this world, who actually are very good at their job, don't last very long at somewhere like Spurs. That's not a coincidence. But I would give somebody like a Championship manager who actually has an idea about playing football, actually knows a system, has got a good system in place, nice and solid, and get somebody like that in there, who because at the moment, is Ange any better than anybody like that? I would probably equate him to somebody in the first division in League One, because he has no clue, and that's probably been disparaging to some people in League One, because you've got the likes of Chris Davies.
Exactly. I think there's some talent there. But just listening to you there, Tony, what it strikes me is you've kind of answered the question that was on our minds there. Could it be that already Levy has been in touch with the Ipswich Town gaffer, who used to be part of the system at Spurs? There's a guy who'd worked for you for very little money, and he was a guy that was, there was a guy who was allegedly ahead of Ange in the 27-man interview list. Could it be that call has already gone in because McKenna knows that he's going to go down? Well, I tell you what I think has happened. I don't think Levy's put the call in, because I think Levy thinks he's the master negotiator, and he'll phone McKenna at midnight on whatever the last possible day is and say, well, your fortune has changed for the better, young man. And I'd be surprised if McKenna hasn't already thought to himself, I won't have anything to do with you, and I'll go and work up the street a piece,
Ipswich are not going to sack him anyway. Ipswich are not going to sack him.
Well, I don't think they'd sack him at all. I think they'd be very happy to have him back in the Championship. But the question is, this is Daniel Levy we're talking about, who isn't happy with anything to do with football at any time because he is a self-inflicted mess. But McKenna would fit the thing we were talking about, which is not going for the Hollywood or bust end of the market, but by going for somebody who was inexpensive, available, spoke English, didn't upset people. I mean, I can see the Ange sexual suddenly being very happy with somebody who was a bit more British than Ange, because I
just think it takes somebody with actually. The thing is with McKenna, you look at his football pedigree, look where he's come from, look at his background. That's a proper football manager, not bloody Brisbane surfboards or whatever you want to call them.
Can I just be the first person to say McKenna out? I don't want there to be anybody in front of me in the queue. We
lost our best coach when he went off to Birmingham, like you said earlier. Chris Davies, and look at the football he's got Birmingham playing, and they're assuring for the Championship next season. And
you're a shameless opportunist, H. You're a shameless opportunist. You are.
I just like to make history.
Shush, we'll be back to the Germans again in a minute.
I'm in the vanguard. I'm saying the zeitgeist. And that's all from the Wolf Slayer this week. We'll speak to you soon. No. So yeah, I think that's a reasonable shout that we've kind of wandered into there. But he would be absolutely perfect because that like I say, that sort of demographic, that package of being available, being inexpensive, and wouldn't cause the fan base to have kittens. I think people would buy into that. In fact, I think we should charge a commission.
But he's got a football pedigree. He's got a football pedigree, though, McKenna. He's got a great background.
But sorry, I don't think we're talking about Daniel Levy here. He's really not interested in this sort of
I apologise for making sense.
Yeah, exactly. We're not looking for anything like logic here. You're just making things very complicated.
We've said it a few times now, but for once, finally, we mean it. And Levy's in last chance saloon with this next appointment because he's been burnt so many times, and it's spectacularly erupted in front of his eyes. Where does he go from now? If he gets this next one wrong, the pack is collapsing on him. The house is imploding.
I totally agree with you. I really do. But, and this is the unfortunate thing of reality, is that all this shouting Levy out and whatever, however upset you are, nobody cares. It's a private company. And the only way you can oust a CEO is by the board. He owns too much stock for you to do it on that basis with other shareholders coming against him. So he's the guys in the witness protection program on that front. You're not going to be able to touch him. You won't be able to find him. And then you've got the fact that the board is comprised of people he's on other boards with. Yeah. There's no division within that board. There's nobody who thinks it's like when we had Paul was it Kemsley or Kemsley? But we had these people who would tell you who we were looking for in the transfer window after their 15th point and the second round of Lambooners, right? These people they were on a different trajectory to our Daniel. Daniel has recruited these people, and they're all the same. And I use the phrase all the time, but they're LinkedIn hires. When you look at them, Matthew Colcott and all the other people involved in THFC, Paperclip Holdings, THFC Property Dissolution.net org, all of these people, they're all linked, and they're not going to get rid of him. They're not going to get rid of him because he's the gravy train.
If you could describe these people, you could describe them as the colour beige.
Vanilla.
Because that's what they are. Yeah, they're just vanilla even. Yeah, they're totally vanilla. There's nothing to them. It's just empty, vacuous nonsense.
It's like, I mean, I don't use LinkedIn anymore, and I never really used it. I was just registered on there, and somebody made a comment to me the other way. My social media presence is just a disgrace because I set up these accounts up and then just neglect them. But you look at LinkedIn and you have people talking about stuff which isn't in the work sphere. So it's not about like a business thing. And they're just saying, for example, that's a really good chip shop. And somebody would say, instead of, their chips are good, they'll say, oh, I had a portion of chips from there. I thought the weight presentation and the way they market themselves within the fast food consumer, blah, blah, blah space is absolute. They don't even speak properly. And that's the people that he's surrounded by. They're extremely, like, I don't know how to describe them. Vanilla is about right. They're beige.
What you're referring to there, H, is corporate bullshit bingo.
Yeah, it is. It's word salad hell, and they can't express an opinion because everything is so entrenched in them. The deep rehearsal of the way they communicate with each other. It's like, how did you find crossing the road coming back from the shops earlier? Well, I pressed a button and I was very fortuitous because the algorithm of the light coming on coincided with a bus they can't speak properly. Anybody who can't speak properly, you've got a problem with, no matter what you're dealing with in life, and they flag themselves up, And that's that. But this is going back to the reality of it. This is the thing. You've got a board of, I don't know, half a dozen people, and they're all on the same bloody bus. And it's the boredom. It's the boredom bus.
I was happy this morning, H, with the article you sent me, which suggested Lang might be getting the foot up his arse and kicked out the club because that's not
in that particular place that he goes to in Holland either.
Yeah, that's a bloke who has no idea what he's doing, can't identify talent. And if what was true in that article is true, it will make me laugh that he couldn't get the Tell deal over the line, so they had to parachute Daniel Levy and Ange directly in there to salvage. You think, what's your job? What are you paid to do? What are you supposed to do?
But you pointed out at the time that the idea that Daniel had to fly in like Wonder Woman, with her lasso to save the day. You've got two. It's a double whammy there. You've got a guy who agreed to take a job, knowing that at some point he was going to be thrown under a bus. That goes without any saying. And then the second whammy is that the footballer we're talking about is a turd. He's not worth the cost of these days. All the calls you make virtually are included in your minutes package. He's not even worth the negative sum of the minutes off your tariff that you've been given for free or heavily subsidized price on your network thing. To phone for 2 hours to give him some cock and ball story. He is human flotsam and jetsam. Absolute waste of space. He can't play football. There's a reason that Bayern Munich didn't want him. And there's a reason he dragged his heels, because he was at Bayern Munich, wandering around giving it out. Oh, look at this. Achtung, I play for Bayern Munich. Oh, yeah, lovely.
999.
Yeah, 999. In the event of emergency, 999. But it's just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. But this master shtuck of an operation managed to pull the boy from the burning deck. Total waste of time and money.
Interestingly, you mentioned about this. Sorry.
What? No, me. No, yes. No, hello. Yeah. Goodbye. Yes. Go on.
One, two.
Two.
It's like Norman Collier, isn't it? Yeah.
You are Norman Collier. Don't worry, mate. You are Norman Collier.
Go on, Chris. You go, mate.
Hey, go on, Tom.
No, it's just you go. We'll have this for the next 5 minutes. We'll go back.
What made me laugh yesterday?
Give it go for the next 4 minutes, and we'll have done the hour. No, go on.
What made me laugh again yesterday was all those supposed pros and senior players who went missing. Yet we'd taken Bergvall out the window by putting him on the bench. And when it wasn't working in midfield, who did we have to bring on? Bergvall. And all the old, more experienced pros, all they wanted to do was give him the ball. And you had a young lad. He was the only one who was prepared to drop his shoulder and run past people. And you think, again, the decision making for the club is broken.
What we yesterday as well really highlighted how much we've missed Mickey.
Yeah.
He looked a different level, didn't he? Looked differently.
It was looking like the rest of the grassroots football and his Champions League. It was that odd. The difference was that clear. It really was that clear. In that one run he intercepted the ball and just ran 40 yards past like 4 players. Great pass. Obviously didn't get the. I think Solanke didn't manage to capture it. Surprise. But in that cameo alone, just showed you what a quality player is, and also shows you how long he's not going to be at this club for, because they're going to be out for him. The moment he's back and fit and playing again, there's going to be all sorts of clubs coming in for him.
Mind you, any player we sell in the foreseeable is going to have a very, very long, intricate series of medicals, because the amount of damage that this fat oaf has caused.
But then
he doesn't see it. He doesn't see it. He has no concept of accountability.
But opens his press conferences. How you doing back there? How's your hamstring holding up?
Yeah.
And you're like, are you actually taking a piss?
And you could tell on that post Bournemouth presser that. And it was so predictable that he was a different man, because he had survived, and his adrenaline was going the fight way opposed to the flee. And so when he came into the room, there was no darty eyes and all this. Instead, he opened up with a shit joke that nobody wanted. Yeah. And that just sums up the low rent nature of him. Really is.
And go back to yesterday as well. And go back to that selection again. We all know he got the selection horribly wrong, because that's why he had substituted so many players in the second half. That was so obvious.
Yeah.
But Spence being put on the left when he's a right back. I mean, what's the bloody point? Now, Spence looked horrible at left back. He looked.
I didn't make it easy for him, mate.
No, he's continued to do so.
So I put him in the fucking goal. I thought that'd teach him a lesson.
And the front six, the front six of Solanke, who did we have? Johnson on the right, who played on the left, Odobert, and then the three in the middle of Sarr, Bissouma, and Bentancur, they were all shit. Name
So,
me
yeah,
how many of those 6 get in a top 6 side? None of them.
Basuma is pathologically useless.
Yeah.
That's a bit racist.
There's nothing.
I mean,
racist
we had his homophobia earlier, where he dragged Brendan Johnson into a conversation about football. This isn't on, lads. We have to be very sensitive when talking about people that are shit at football. We have to say nice things if there's a category that they fall into. That's the way the world works.
I'm going to refer back to a saying I've said previously on other recordings, which is facts don't care about feelings.
Yeah,
so
precisely.
It's simple as that. He is pathologically useless. He cannot pass a ball. He cannot tackle. And Bournemouth, actually, really interesting yesterday. They could have gone through the middle. They could have gone through that centre midfield anyway, but they didn't. They chose not to. They chose to use the wings, which is a terribly revolutionary thing to do.
Never
and
seen
to actually
it.
pass
Never
the ball
seen
to
it.
players. Yeah, no, it's like, Johnson does chip in with goals, but as we've said before, when he's not chipping in with goals, he does nothing else. He's constantly, and our front players are constantly receiving the ball with their back to goal. And guess what?
Yeah.
That's the wrong direction.
Correct.
Whereas Bournemouth yesterday, they were making the runs and they were passing the ball forward and they were running onto the ball. It makes a hell of a lot of difference. But
no,
we've got such great coaching, haven't we? Great coaching.
Well, you couldn't be, you couldn't be more on the truth there, because if you look at great players that we've seen in our lifetime in recent years, didn't work as managers, obviously. But if you look at Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard, they both exploited how wonderful a footballer can use a ball that they can run onto and run with. And you've got the momentum of people behind you and all the rest of it. But this guy doesn't know the first thing about coaching. And we haven't got a single player who has improved. The only way they have improved is out of desperation. His methods have been challenged and he's been forced into giving them a go. And even then, he's managed to fuck it up, because you've got Jed Spence playing out of position, so he didn't have a good game against Bournemouth. And you've got other players like Archie Gray, for example, should have been played in the midfield. Almost certainly, I can't predict the future, but would have offered more than he was on the bench. Could have certainly replaced Bissouma, far more dynamic, and I'd much rather see Bissouma and Bergvall playing together. It's just, but this guy doesn't have it in him, but he thinks he knows absolutely everything, and that's what we're up against.
Another one that needs to go in the summer, James Maddison. He's just he's becoming an absolute prima donna. He spends more time giving it this, but he's the only offensive outlet that we've got that's got any attacking flair. Yeah.
What did I say? What was it I said yesterday on the chat, wasn't it? He looks like he's directing planes on the deck of an aircraft carrier, because he's waving his arms around so much. It's
just shooter,
exactly. It's like, it's absolutely pathetic.
Careful,
he really is a man boy.
Careful, Chris is currently coping with his PTSD from having played the Top Gun piano in the recent days. That was a great picture.
Have we lost that, mate? Have we lost that loving feeling? Is what I'd like to know.
Well, I had some feeling there at the weekend, but it's certainly gone now. Well, you should have made it look as if your hands were moving. You should have made an effort in the pictures to look more animated. But I imagine you get 30 seconds, and then they naff you off for the next teenager to have a go.
Yeah.
Did you get any good souvenirs this time round?
I bought some top quality merchandise. I'll share that with you off camera.
all with screw top lids, I would imagine.
Yeah.
another pair of Brokeback Mountain boots, probably.
Yeah, they're very limited edition. You can only get them in the gayest parts of America. And since Trump's come in, there's even fewer outlets available.
Other brands of shoes are available.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't care to sport a heel. He keeps his cigars in them. That's what they're for. You
don't need to go to a comedy show, folks. It's all here.
History, well, very limited period during the Second World War.
we keep mentioning it once. I think we've got away with it. You know?
I think we've just about got away with it. Send them back to their rooms or we'll have them shot. Right. Listen, I think we've just about covered Bournemouth. We're going to be looking forward to AZ. We will be covering that intensely because I think the value is good. And I hope you appreciate we're trying to use a bit of humour to dispel, speaking about Ange in anything approaching reverential terms, because she just isn't worth it anymore. That's it for now. Don't forget you can subscribe. The subscriptions are up. The comments are up. The comments have improved enormously since the children have gone back to school, and now the grown-ups are telling us what they're actually seeing. That's it for now. Good luck. Keep it Tottenham.